Sup y'all, it's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and the more I play the Legion Alpha, the more I give feedback about it, the more streams I do showing gameplay and kind of talking about it with you guys, discussion videos and all that, the more it's led me to wonder, and the more it's led me to think, what would I really like to see added into the expansion? So what I wanted to do in this video is give you guys my top, actually not top 5, that's a little bit too clickbaity, 5 things that I would like to see added into World of Warcraft Legion. And also one thing before we actually start this is that number 1 is not the most important and number 5 is not the least important. It's just basically a numbered list. So number 1 is actually something that I would like to see added back into the game, and that is badge gear. Now if you guys didn't play back in Burning Crusade, Burning Crusade added one thing into the game that I thought was really great, is that every single time you did a heroic and you killed a boss in a heroic, or you did some dungeons like Karazhan, each boss would drop maybe 2 badges of justice, and there were vendors in Shattrath City, which was the main city back then, and you could use those badges of justice. You could spend, I think it was like 40 of them to buy a pretty good trinket. I guess like what you would consider right now at the end of Warlords of Draenor, maybe like 715, maybe a 720 trinket. And so what that badge gear did is it basically gave people an option to where they were always progressing and always moving forward with their character, even whenever they actually didn't get a piece of gear. And so that really makes things, I guess, like makes running old content still important. I remember doing Karazhan, and Karazhan was like the entry level raid back in Burning Crusade. I remember doing that whenever I was not clearing Sunwell, unfortunately, but clearing Black Temple and clearing most of Sunwell with my guild. And the reason for that is because we could go through Karazhan relatively quickly, maybe bring in a few people's alts, and so that kind of helps people, I guess, like get their alts geared up, or maybe just like other people like kind of coming into groups. It kind of incentivizes players from all different walks of the Warcraft life to come in and do Karazhan, or the raiding Warcraft life, to come in and do Karazhan, so they can get those badges of justice, so they can use those badges to buy better gear for their off specs, or certain other things maybe for their other characters. So I think that that would be a really great thing to add back into the game, because again, it would incentivize running old content, and I think that's very important. I think that in Mists of Pandaria this was less of an issue, but in Warlords of Draenor it's a very big problem, that it seems like people are no longer playing the expansion, they're just playing the patch. And so if you added the badge gear back into the game through the old raids, it would give people an incentivization to go back and do those old raids and maybe get some extra badges, and maybe play with some people who aren't quite as good, but maybe just fill a spot or give a certain buff or something like that. I think that would be very good for pretty much all parties involved, and it would also give something that, again, players would be working towards over time. So you log on, and even if you don't get a piece of gear, you still get something. I think that's really important. Now, number 2 is probably the most contentious thing that I'm going to say in here, is a consolidation of the raid difficulties. Right now, I've talked about this many times, and that's why, of course, I'm going to be talking about it again, because this is one thing I think is probably like the most important thing in the game right now, especially with how in-game centric it is the fact that we have 4 raid difficulties right now. We have LFR, Flex, Normal, LFR, Normal, Heroic, and Mythic, and I would like to see those raid difficulties consolidated into ideally just one raid difficulty. That's what I would like to see in a perfect Asmongold expansion. One raid difficulty with optional hard modes similar to Old War. That would be perfect for me. I don't really know if that's going to happen one way or another, but I would like to at least see things limited down to 3, or even better yet, 2 raid difficulties. I think that really killing the boss, killing a boss the first time you kill a boss, no matter what difficulty it's on, that's probably going to be there's a diminishing returns after you kill the boss on one difficulty and then you just kill it on the next difficulty, between just moving up and killing the boss for the first time ever. And I think that you saw that with the Lich King, and in a lot of ways with Illidan, with Rawdin, with Sinestra, stuff like that. And so I would really like to see a consolidation of these raid difficulties, and I think that would also help with the item level inflation and a number of other issues as well. Mostly just kind of having content outdate itself. And that's what I was talking about before with how Warlords of Draenor, we basically just play the patch and we don't play the entire expansion. There's no real incentivization to go into Blackrock Foundry or to go into High Mall Mythic, really. And so whenever you cut down those raid difficulty, or sorry, the raid sizes, or raid difficulty sizes, whatever you really want to call it, basically as raid difficulties, whenever you cut those down, it kind of removes the amount of times you need to make an incremental jump in item level, or Blizzard would need to make an incremental jump in item level. So I think that would be really, really important, and I think it would make the game more rewarding. Actually, clearing the raids would be more rewarding. Maybe not as many people could do it, but the people who were able to do it would definitely get more out of it, which is, I think, very, very important. Now, the third thing is another thing that kind of goes back to Burning Crusade, which is relevant professions. Right now, I don't think the professions that we have in Warlords of Draenor are very relevant whatsoever. There are some very niche elements of them that make them useful, but really the professions don't really add a lot to your character, and especially until they added the item upgrades and the 6 of 6 upgrades, there was no real reason to use the profession gear. So what I would really like to see is for them to move back to a Burning Crusade style or a vanilla style of professions, and what that would mean is, it takes you quite a while to actually make a piece of gear, but whenever you actually make that piece of gear, it's very valuable and it's very powerful, and it's basically equivalent to the current raid gear. So I think that would really help people, in terms of, I think if there's a problem, really, then this has been happening for a very, very long time. I would say even ever since Wrath of the Lich King, it's been an issue, and maybe it was less of an issue in Mists of Pandaria, but it was still an issue then, is that there's really only one way to improve your character, and, outside of maybe the first few, 2 or 3 steps, and that's through doing raids. And so I would really like to see some other forms of progression outside of raids, and where you can actually make sizable increases in your character's power, and I think professions really did serve as a very strong form of solo player progression, and I would really like to see those come back into the game in the same way that they were in Burning Crusade and also in Vanilla. Now, number 4 is basically the same thing, and I also want to kind of, it's basically rewarding player progression outside of raids, and that's kind of why I want to, they're kind of one and the same, but I do think that they're separate because professions, there's also a lot of other things you could do with professions besides just making gear. But with what I mean by rewarding character progression outside of raids is that right now in Legion, we're getting the world quests, and right now, whenever I play the Legion Alpha, the world quests are very lucrative because there's no other content in the game. The world quests are basically the highest level content that you can do. And what's worrying me about Legion is, I can see in the dungeon journals and everything like that, is that the LFR gear from the, not Nighthole, but the Emerald Nightmare, Emerald Dream raid is already going to be 850 item level, which is much higher item level than basically any of the gear that you can get through the world quests. And so what I think that's going to do is it's going to make it to where whenever you, by the time that the raid finder comes out, and after people are already doing that, there will be no real reason to go and do these world quests because you can just get the same gear, well, better gear from raid finder. And also this is an issue with the mythic dungeons. I think that the mythic dungeons will also outdate the world boss gear, sorry, not world boss, well, potentially that too, but the world quest gear. And so what I would really like to see is the world quests play a bigger part in leveling, in not just leveling, but leveling up your character whenever you get to 110, in terms of getting better gear. And I think if they played a bigger part in the gear progression, that they would be more rewarding, and I think they would make a more rewarding experience for players, rather than just having to make all of your power gains through raids. Because, of course, there are a lot of people who want to raid, and they just don't really have time to commit to a real schedule. So I think that giving people other alternative ways to progress their character outside of raids would be really rewarding for those people. And I think that was something that the game really had in Burning Crusade, and it also really had in Vanilla, that it doesn't really have that much anymore in Warlords of Draenor, and it didn't have in Mists of Pandaria or even Cataclysm. So I would really like to see more rewarding and more paths to character power progression outside of raids. Now, the last one is a really big one, and I think it's very important, and that is playing with your guild, incentivizing guild play. And the reason for that is that I think that, with an MMO like World of Warcraft, I think that what really is going to keep people engaged and keep people playing the game, it's not going to be able to it's not going to be clearing the raids, it's not going to be awesome world quest content, it's not going to be anything, it's not going to be any of these things. What's going to keep people in the game is having friends that they can log on and talk to and play with in the game. I remember back in Sunwell, and there was kind of a big content drought between whenever Sunwell came out and whenever Wrath of the Lich King came out, and I didn't really have a whole lot of people in my guild quit the game, and the reason reason for that is because we would all come in and we would play and, just do daily quests together and interact with each other and do things, in a group. And I think that the more that you incentivize playing with the same people, not just playing with people, but playing with the same people, the more, facility and the more ways you can facilitate creating those long-term lasting relationships that I think are what really keep people tied to the game. Without those, I think it's very easier for people to just quit the game after they've cleared the content. But if there was more incentivization to play with your friends and to do that kind of stuff, I think that there would be less of a cyclical nature of the subscription model, because I think you guys know right now, whenever Blizzard puts out a patch, like a lot of people resubscribe, they play the patch, they go through all the content, then they quit. And I think that if they had friends to play with more and to progress with beyond just very easily accessible content, it would drive more people. I'm not saying a lot of people, just more people to maybe try and take that next step, or at least doing the steps they already had done more often or more just over time, because they're able to do them with their friends. So what I would really like to see, I guess, like more functionally here is, like, let's say, and this is just like random ideas that I'm throwing out here, and I don't really know, it's like, obviously I'm sure there are problems with these, is that, like, if you did a raid with mostly a guild group, if that gave you a higher chance to get Warforged items or Titan Forged items or Socketed or tertiary items, something like that, basically better rewards or just more pieces of loot in general, I think that would, incentivize people to join guilds and to start kind of playing with the same people over and over, because of course they'd be in the same guild. Now, also, I played Black Desert Online for a while, and they had like these guild quest things where you had to go out and like kill like 5,000 of a certain monster. I don't really know if they could add those into WoW, but if they could do something like a guild quest, and I know they have those in a way right now, but they're not lucrative at all. They're basically worthless. Like, it gives you like 200 gold or something like 1,000 gold for killing a raid boss in a guild group. That's not worth it at all. So I would really like to see, maybe like a 10,000 or 50,000, not maybe 50,000 might be a little bit too much, maybe 10 or 20,000 gold reward for killing an end boss in a guild group of a current dungeon. So like hypothetically, there'd be like a guild quest every week to kill, let's say, Mythic Blackhand or Heroic Archimond in a guild group, and if you did that, you would get maybe 10,000 or 20,000 gold added into your guild bank. And so I think that would really kind of incentivize people to form guilds and basically use those guilds to make more money. Now, of course, people could exploit that in certain ways, and I don't really know how you could deal with that. Maybe one person can only participate in one of those events per week. I don't really know, but I'm just kind of throwing ideas out there. I think that incentivizing guild play and group play with the same people is going to be very, very important in keeping people engaged and playing the game longer. So anyway, guys, those are my 5 things that I would really like to see added into Legion. I was about to say Warlords of Draenor, but we're almost done with that, thank God. Anyway, so I'd kind of like to hear what you guys would like to see added into the expansion, and I'm kind of curious because I have my ideas and I think they would be really good, but I know some people might disagree, and I'd like to, of course, hear why, and also I'd like to hear what you guys would want to see added into the expansion as new features or content or anything else. So anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you guys agree, because this is obviously my ideas, right? So it's not like I'd say them if I thought they were wrong. But anyway, I do hope you guys agree, and I hope you guys liked the video. So thank you guys for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe.